What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So as the draft rapidly approaches, it's almost 2 weeks out at this point, and I continue to roll out my prospect grades, prospect scouting reports. I thought it'd be a fun idea because I do like to keep myself accountable to go through my 2023, 2022, and 2021 prospect rankings. In 2021 and 2022, I gave a full top 10. In 2023, I gave a full goddamn top 50. Similarly, in 2024, I'm probably going to do a top 50, maybe even a top 64. So I want to go through them right now, and I honestly don't really remember them. I had someone else make the graph for 2021 and 2022. It's loaded up. We're going to kind of get a blind reaction. I remember roughly where I had most of these guys, but yeah, I wanted to run through it and see how 2, 3, 4 years, or no, only 1, 2, 3 years later, how did my prospect rankings look? Because obviously I'm going to get a lot wrong. I'm going to get a couple right. It is an absolute shit show when it comes to prospects. I like to think that I'm half decent, but a lot of guys, these are 17, 18-year-olds at the end of the day. You're not going to get them perfect. So without further ado, we're going to go through 2023 right now. And looking at 2023, I think I did a pretty solid job. Bedard, Michkov, Fantilli, Carlson, Benson, Smith, Leonard. That was kind of my set in stone top 7. That was a lot of people's set in stone top 7. I had Benson over Will Smith. I really like Benson. Nowadays I would maybe lean Will Smith going forward, but I still think Benson was extremely underrated in this class. When looking at it, he obviously fell to 13th. Most people had him top 10, but I was very high on him. Reinbacher at 8. He was my number 1 defenseman, but this class, although it had a fantastic top 4, top 7 for the most part, the defensemen were very weak. So Reinbacher, although he was my number 1 defenseman, he'd probably be like 4th or 5th in this year's class. Gabe Perreault at 9. That was kind of controversial. A lot of people had him between 15 to 25. He fell all the way to 23rd. So I got to pat myself on the back a little bit for that one. He was obviously fantastic at Boston College this year. And then Dalibor Dvorsky at 10th. Solid season this year in the OHL. Now, when looking at the top, I still stand by Michkov at 2nd. I would maybe Carlson and Fantilli are basically interchangeable at this point for me. So yeah, I think it's only been a year, so you really can't like some of these guys haven't even. A lot of these guys have actually no. 4 of these guys have played in the NHL. 6 have not as of right now, so it's kind of hard. This is by far the one that we're going to have the least on. We're going to go through 11 through 20 as well. Oliver Moore 11. I had Simashev pretty high. ASP 13. I'd probably move up ASP right now. I really like what he did in the SHL this season. I was decently high on Nate Danielson. He had a solid season this year in the WHL. Quinton Mustio was much higher than most, and after the way that he tore up the OHL, he'd probably arguably be top 10 right now from the 2023 draft. If we were to do a redraft, which would be extremely stupid, don't get me wrong. Andrew Crystal I liked. It's going to be tough to see how he translates to the NHL level. Extremely skilled, can dominate against the WHL competition. I don't know how he's going to do at the NHL, though. Braden Yeager, solid season. Will Lander was pretty good at Boston University. Wood, Hanzik, 2 bigger guys. I wasn't too high. They obviously went a couple spots higher in the draft. Let's keep on going. Guliev, Barlow, Dragicevic hasn't really panned out. Daniil Boot ended up going 12th overall. Had a very good season this year in the KHL. He's a lot higher if I had to redo this. Riley Height killed it this year in the WHL. Gavin Brindley, I should have been higher on Gavin Brindley. That was a mistake by me. I was a little bit lower on Edward Chalet. He's a pretty solid prospect overall. And then we'll just storm through this as well. Bradley Nadeau, I should have him higher. He'd be much higher right now in a redraft. Taylor Molendijk had a very good year this season. And then anybody else? We got Trey Augustine. He was a solid pick by the Detroit Red Wings. He'd move up some spots. I was very low on Charlie Schrammel. He ended up going like 20th overall to Minnesota. Did not have that good a year at Wisconsin. That was kind of a whiff. My boy Danny Nelson, Islanders prospect. So yeah, overall, Artu Karki actually had a really good season this year in the CHL. So yeah, overall, I think I did an okay job. But now we're going to go to 2022 where it might get a little wacky. Let's see this. I don't fully remember. I know I have Matty Beniers as the number 1 prospect. No, 2021's Matty Beniers. Never mind. 2022. Here's the 2022 list. Logan Cooley, number 1. Slavkovsky, Shane Wright. I got some shit for not having, throughout the season, I was saying, Shane Wright's not really that number 1 guy. I remember in January, I made a video being like, Shane Wright isn't this can't-miss prospect. And I got absolutely shat on, because when looking at Shane Wright, he had an amazing 15-year-old or 16-year-old season in the OHL. But then after that, he kind of plateaued. He kind of maybe hit puberty early, and then didn't really fully develop. And obviously, Shane Wright's still a very good prospect, but everybody had him consensus number 1. I disagreed. I went with Logan Cooley, who I think at this point everybody would pick Cooley over Shane Wright. Now Slavkovsky, I also was kind of high on. I didn't have him number 1. I thought Logan Cooley was that ideal first-line skilled center, maybe a little bit undersized. Slavkovsky, fantastic this year for the Montreal Canadiens, 50 points. I had Jiricek over Nemitz. I'd switch that right now. I still very high on Jiricek. I think he was more of a developmental guy, considering he is bigger. He needs some work on his skating. I still think he has maybe more potential than Nemitz. He just got to put it together, and he kind of got unfortunately drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're probably going to ruin him. Matthew Savoy at 5th. That's tough. I don't know. He's very interesting. Extremely skilled, undersized, doesn't really have the physicality of like Zach Benson, but he tore up the WHL this year. It's going to be interesting to see. Buffalo's kind of a tough spot because they just have so many goddamn young forwards. It's going to be interesting to see how he gets ice time. But yeah, I had him very high. Danila Yurov at 7th. Most people had him outside of the top 15. I'm taking that as a W. KHL this season had like 45 points in 56 games or something ridiculous like that. He's putting up crazy numbers. Brad Lambert, I was also very high on. He fell to what, 30th or 31st overall to the Winnipeg Jets. Very good season this year in the AHL. So I'm taking W's on Yurov, Lambert, L on Gauthier. He wasn't really, I don't think he was really top 5 mocked. I think he was in that like 6 to 9 range. So I maybe had a little bit low. And then Joakim Kamel kind of fell to the Predators. Wasn't that good this year in the AHL. So about solid. I'm trying to think of the guys that I missed in 2022. Pavel Minchikov went 10th overall actually to the Anaheim Ducks. So missed on that. Wasn't in my top 10. Are there anybody else that I'm clearly missing from 2022? I don't really think so because, I mean, Matthew Pontra, nobody had him top 10. Okay. I think me not buying into the Shane Wright hype kind of makes this look a lot better considering everybody else had him either first or second. I was decently high on Slavkovsky. I didn't love the pick. I thought they should have went with Logan Cooley, but clearly that was a solid pick looking back on it. Overall, I'd give this ranking. The Nemec one is kind of bad, especially if it was Savoy and Nemec switched, I would stand by it. But now Nemec below Savoy looks like a pretty bad take, even though I still think Savoy could end up being a pretty good player. That's kind of a yikes. But with Yurov and Lambert, I kind of hit on that, even though they haven't been falling like NHLers by any stretch. But still, I think this is pretty solid. Now over to 2021, where Matty Beniers is the number one guy in 2021. I remember that. When looking at 2021, let's see this. Okay. It's interesting. Matty Beniers first. After I was victory lapping this nonstop, I think last year. I was like, he was my number one prospect. He just won the Calder, 57 points. I still think he's going to be a very solid 65 to 70 point defensive center. Will he ever be a full-blown number one center? I don't know if he has the offense capabilities for that. So he probably wouldn't be number one right now for me. Luke Hughes, very promising offensive first season in the NHL. He has a decent way to go defensively in terms of his coverages. But overall, I think that offensive talent was so potent back in 2021, and he was one of the youngest players in the entire draft. He had like a September 5th birthday or something like that. Like he should arguably be like, he was 10 days off of being a 2022 prospect. So I liked him over Owen Power. This is another one where I went against the grain kind of on the consensus number one prospect that was Owen Power at the time. Owen Power is still a very good player, but this was a little bit of a down year from Owen Power after a pretty solid freshman year or rookie year. William Eklund at 3rd. I stand by that. I still think William Eklund is an absolute stud. And this year he had, I think, like 42 points on a horrendous San Jose Sharks team. I think him with Celebrini or even playing with Will Smith, he can really pop. I think he can eventually be a 70-point guy. I'm standing by that. I know someone like Mason McTavish on this definitely should be higher looking back on it. I don't have like a Wyatt Johnston, but I don't really think a lot of people had Wyatt Johnston back then, considering he fell all the way, to 24th, or like a Stan Coven or Matthew Nyes. If you're screaming that, you're out of your fucking mind. They weren't that high in this process. Dylan Guenther at 5th. I like that. Dylan Guenther was my favorite sniper in this draft. You look at him, for some reason, was playing in Tucson to start this year. I don't really know why, considering the fact that he torched it once he got to the NHL level. He had 35 points in 45 games. It was either 17 goals and 18 assists or 18 goals and 17 assists. But he was fantastic, and I'm still very high in him going forward. I thought that was an absolute steal, the Arizona Coyotes getting to draft him. So that was a great pick by Utah, and I think I really hit on that. I think he's eventually going to be a 35 and 35-point guy. I think he does have that potential. He's my number one guy in 2022. So I thought the Arizona Coyotes absolutely crushed the 2021 and 2022 draft. 2023, Simashev Boot, not so much with my rankings, but beyond that, that was great. Simon Evanson, still think that he's a little bit of a project. I think he's eventually going to be a very solid guy for Detroit. Obviously, I like Moritz Seider more. I like ASP more. It's going to be interesting to see how that blue line ends up developing in Detroit, but I still think that's solid placement. He went 8th overall, right, to Detroit in that draft. Wallstead, 9th. That was probably very high for a goalie. He obviously wasn't the first goalie selected in that draft. That was Sebastian Cossa, who I've been low on, but he actually did have a pretty solid season in the AHL this year. But I still think Wallstead is the best goalie in this draft and continues to develop very solid. It's going to be very interesting to see him next year with Minnesota in terms of the fact that they re-signed Fleury, so I don't know if he's going to play in the NHL. He's got to play at the NHL at some point, but he's still only like 21 years old. And then Kent Johnson, not Wyatt Johnston. Kent Johnson at 10th. That's pretty solid. He ended up going, 5th to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I thought that was a little bit of a reach on draft night, and clearly now up and down. He definitely has a lot of potential, but he hasn't really been able to fully put it together, especially this year with Pascal Vincent. Bit of a down year for him. Very interesting. But I think that this one's actually pretty solid. I think this is probably, 2023 was pretty straightforward, but I actually think that this was a solid cook by me. Overall, pretty decent, man. I'm not going to victory lap this because it's not like that out of pocket. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about these rankings? The Nemec one kills me, man. That was, I should have been higher on him, but I still believe in Juracek. But yeah, let me know. In Nemec, the other thing with Nemec, he was not a consensus top 3 pick, a top 3 prospect at the time. It was pretty surprising when New Jersey took him 2nd overall. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about these prospect rankings? What were some of your prospect hot takes back in 2021, 2022, 2023? For me, Benson ahead of Will Smith, 2022. Logan Cooley being the best prospect by a decent margin. In 2021, maybe Luke Hughes over Owen Power is probably my hottest take. But let me know in the comments. What do you think? I can't wait to continue to roll out my 2024 draft prospect grades and all that. And then we're eventually going to, probably in like 2 weeks, probably like the Monday or Tuesday before the draft, I'm going to give my full, I'll probably make it in YouTube only like a top 20, but like Instagrams will be a full goddamn top 50. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.